gonna do here now? This is Henry Hank Shrawder. I was in the U.S. Navy during World War II. My rank was a gunner's mate 3rd class. My serial number was 650-48-47. I served in the Armed Guard and the Amphibious Corps. And, but now what?
Okay. Did you volunteer or were you drafted?
I volunteered. I was 16 years old in February of 1942, and then I was called to Harrisburg a couple of weeks later to get all the information they needed, and then they said they'll call me in 2 weeks when I'm 17, and they did call me before I was 17, and there was 28 of us, and they gave us a physical examination. There was only 11 of us were eligible to get in, so 11 of us, so we went home waiting for a call. So April 2nd I was called and sworn in and shipped to Philadelphia, and there was 11 of us, and out of those 11 people there's only one made it, and that was lucky me. So then from there I went to Great Lakes Naval Training Station and had vigorous training there. Just keep going.
Just keep going.
Keep going. And after my naval training there, then I went over to into Chicago Armory. There on the lake, and the gunnery school, and learned to fire Thompson submachine guns, 20mm guns, 45mm, all of them. And of course, that was really, really rigorous. And then after that training was all over, then I was shipped down to New Orleans and assigned to the SSER camp, which was a tanker. I remember we hold like 55,000 barrels of high octane gasoline. We went from port to port, and there's none I missed down there in the Gulf of Mexico, all the way from Key West, no, not Key West, but, well, anyway, all the bases, and all up through the Mississippi. I went up through the Mississippi and all the places. And from then on, in September then of 42, I was taken off of there and sent back to a base and reassigned to a Liberty ship, the SS Thomas Marshall. I'm sure it was Thomas Marshall. And that was a Liberty ship. And of course, when you go on those new ships, everything has to be redone. All the guns and everything are covered with gauze and mulline, and you had to get all our shells ready to go because everything is done by hand, and that was work. So then we set sail. The date I have, but I don't remember right now. And we set sail and landed in Casablanca, Morocco, in November, sometime right after the invasion of Morocco. And we unloaded our cargo there, and of course we were hung up then there with everybody having dysentery, and we were compounded to stay there for a long time, and the storms go up and our ships were just all over the place, rubbing each other and banging against each other. Then we left Casablanca, came back to New York. I was taken off with the Thomas Marshall and sort of given leave for a time out, and then I was assigned to the Benjamin Williams, and we loaded New York and Boston, sort of up and down to the shore coast there, and then we left there and landed in Belfast, Ireland, and we laid there in the harbor for quite a while, and I got to go and leave, and I had quite a good time in Ireland. It's a beautiful country. And then several days later, we went down to Liverpool, England, where we unloaded our cargo. And there I had time to go ashore and enjoy Liverpool, England. And then we sailed back home again, and I landed in New York. And then I was sent down to New Orleans. And after I got New Orleans, they sent me back up. It was North Carolina, I think, to pick up the LST 531. And after we had the 531 all equipped, ready to go, and then we sailed up and down the East Coast for quite a while, Boston and around different ports. And then we finally met a convoy of LSTs, I don't know, maybe maybe 20, 30 of them. Huh? More. Shut up.
No.
But then, and then the LST, we landed over in England. So we went over to England, and there we went through rigorous maneuvers, going up and down the place and unloading and loading and whatever, getting ready for the big invasion. And then in April, we were getting ready for Exercise Tiger, which we didn't know what it really was. We thought we were going to have the real invasion of France, because I remember they took us up the poop deck and even gave us a last prayer. And we all thought, oh, we're going into France. And then we set sail out in the harbor. We anchored there for quite a while. And while we were there, I saw a reconnaissance plane, German reconnaissance plane go over. And I said, oh my God, they see us all sitting here. And there was a lot of LSTs. And then nobody ever thought no more of it. So in a day or so, we set sail. And we get out in the harbor. It was Lime Bay. I forget the name of it. We were going these exercises. And we were loaded with troops. The tank deck was loaded with ducks, and I mean it was loaded. And those ducks were loaded with troops, and the top deck was loaded with soldiers and equipment. And I got to talk to a lot of the soldiers, and a lot of them participated in the invasion of Africa, up through Sicily and around. And they were really hardened troops. They had ammunition and gasoline, everything like a real war. And they all thought we were really going into battle. So I was assigned to duty, which the first time I served duty on a 531, because I was a gunner's mate, and I used to maintain guns. And we had to be available in case one would jam or anything. But I was assigned to the 12 to 4 watch on April 28th, and I slept in one of the compartments on the top bunk, and I get up and climbed up the line, going to walk the whole length of the ship. I'm going to climb up the escape hatch. So I climbed up up through the ladder and going out the escape hatch, which it isn't very big. You barely can crawl through. In fact, today I know I couldn't go in. And then I walked up through the ship, and I met several soldiers that were still awake. They weren't sleeping, and I talked to them, and they were telling me their experiences. Then I got to my guard watch, and when I was up to 20mm turret, which is about 6 feet off the deck, I put on earphones, and I was going to be the fireman to pull the trigger. So I put on my earphones and got in the saddle, and like if I was going to fire a gun. And by that time, one of the officers came up, and he wasn't very pleasant. And he stood up on the edge of the rails, and I told him, I said, you better stand up on there. If anything happens, you're going to fall down and get killed. And he said, I'm an officer. I can do anything. So I mind. So by that time, boom, 2 torpedoes hit us. And I never saw him since. And I flew down into the deck below and landed on a big rope hawser. And I was hanging by these earphones. And I took them off, and by that time I saw one of the U-boats go by, and Louis' security was there. I said, come on, Louis, let's get him. So we jumped on a 40mm gun, and some other person jumped on it. I think it was a soldier. And we started firing, and I got about 7 rounds off, and then the gun jammed. So I said, we better jump overboard. And there was nobody else there. So Louis and the other guy went, and then I was the last one off. And luckily, when I went off, I landed at a spot where there weren't too many soldiers or sailors dead, because board bodies were just flying everywhere, trucks and tanks and everything. So I was down. Do we want to do this?
Yeah.
So I started swimming, and I never thought of ever dying or anything. I was just thinking of praying, and I went on to swim a little bit. Then I met Chris Christopherson, and he was naked, and he wanted me to help him. I said, well, come on, I'll take you along with me. So he hung on to me for a while. Then I met Samuelson, and I don't know if he had clothes on or not, but anyway, I hung on to him for a while too, and then all of a sudden my life jacket started to leak air, or rather it was going down, so I started blowing air in with the hoses, and I couldn't blow too much more, so I told those guys, I said, well, I'm going to have to put you some other place because I can't go along much longer with three of you in one life jacket. So I saw a life raft there, and it was loaded with soldiers, dead and living. I mean, lots and lots of soldiers. And so I put those guys on that life raft, and then I swam away, and I looked back. But that time that life raft upset, and I never saw them two since. So I swam merrily on my way, I was all by myself. And flames, I swam through flames, and one place I had to go underneath the flames, there was a streak of flames I couldn't get around. And then I swam a little longer, and then I found the life raft. There was about 12 or 13 guys on there, and it was down in the water where it was waist deep. And I knew, well, if I get on there, it's going to sink. So I picked about 2 or 3 dead guys off, which I didn't like doing, and made myself a seat and got on there. And the guy next to me, he was dead, and I told the guy, I said, I'm going to throw him overboard because we got to get up out of the water. We were down and over our waist. And he was mad, that was his buddy, and he was all burned. And then I said, well, we ought to get some flares up. So in the life raft, you have it in the middle of the life raft, there's an emergency kit which has flares and food and fishing kits and things in them. So I went to open that up, and I don't know if you want to hear all this.
Go ahead.
But then here's one of the sailors had his leg out across the lid. And I said, move your leg. I said, I want to get some flares out and shoot them up so he can find us. And he said, I can't move my leg. I'm an officer such and such and so. I know who he was, but, and I said, well, I don't care who you are, but I said, if you don't move your leg, I'm going to throw you overboard. I was in good shape. And you know, sweet 19 years, tough. And he said, well, I'm not moving my leg. So by that time, I was getting ready to get a hold of his leg. And by that time, I looked up and I saw a great big wall. And I thought, uh-oh, the Germans got us. And I looked over, and the guys hollered down, come on over here, we'll pick you up. So here was an English ship. An English ship, and it looked about 150 feet high. So we went over, and then there was a rope ladder down over the side, and we climbed up, and some of them couldn't go up themselves. They lowered down, there was 12 of us, and they lowered things down to bring them up. And I looked down when after I was up, and there was 3 or 4 of them laying there dead, sprawled out like a spread eagle. They brought them up, quite a few of them up, and then they took me down into one of the officers' quarters, and they treated me with royalty. Boy, they gave me rum, anything I wanted, and they took all my clothes and dried them. In fact, they dried that money off, which I showed you out there, my wallet, and after that was dried off, well, I got my underwear dried, and I put them on, and then they finally got the other things dried off. I don't know how they done it so quick, but then I put my dungarees on and my top, and I had no socks or anything, so one of the sailors gave me a pair of heavy socks, and they were heavy. And so I was in my stocking feet then for a couple of days. So then they came in to me and said, do you feel good enough to identify some dead bodies? I said, oh, maybe, I don't know. So they took me over to one compartment, and there they had all these guys laying there, I don't know, a whole row of them, dead bodies. And they asked me if I could identify them. I said, boy, I can't. I was really a mess. So I didn't identify any of them, but I swear I saw the captain was the first one in the row, but I wouldn't swear to it. And I went amongst the sailors and all, and they were so good to me. And then he took us ashore and put us, there was a tent there with cots in it. And they said, everyone go on a cot if you can walk and get on a cot. So I climbed on a cot, and then he came over and put a big heavy blanket over me, and naturally I was upset. I was crying and hurt. I was just sorrowful. And then somebody came over and lifted everything off of my head, and some nurse, and said, "Are you hurt? Do you need any help?" I said, "Well, my knee," but I said, "I'm okay, I can walk." And so they left me there, and then after a while they came and said, "Okay, we're going down to, I think it's YMCA or someplace for sleeping." So they marched us, and anybody could walk. There's several of us. So we walked right down through the middle of town, and I was still in those stocking feet. Didn't have no shoes yet. And, the English women and men, all of them, but the women mostly, they come out, they just wanted to give you everything they had, they were so nice to us. And of course they'd laugh at my socks. And they took us down to the YMCA, and I still didn't get no clothing. And then they come in with a big army truck and loaded us in an army truck. It took us up to a vacated army base. And it said, "Now, no one leaves here, no one talks, no one does nothing. You daren't see anybody or talk to anybody. We're going to give you all postcards, and you have to write home that everything is going fine, you're in good shape, and this and that. And then after you do that, you go down here to this big shed down here, this army shed, and pick out some clothes." So we done that. And then we went down to the shed and picked out all these army clothes, and nothing fit. But I still didn't get the shoes. There were no shoes, so. But then later on, they shipped us. I forget where they took us in, someplace where we did get Navy clothes. I can never remember where that was. Then we got our Navy outfit again, back. And then they sent us to a Navy base in, I think it was in Plymouth. And there they said, "Now you take a shower, and this is where you're going to stay and sleep." So there's no hot water, no cold water, and I'll tell you, that cold water even felt good. But then they came around and said, "Now we're going to assign you to duty." So they put us on duty from 12 to 7 in the morning, unloading 500-pound bombs from a ship. And then they take them in a big tunnel. And none of us were in any shape to be loading bombs. So the next couple of days, after a couple of nights of that, two officers came, and they were requesting us, said, "Your records are all lost, we don't know who you are or what's what, so we want to get all the records straight." So we had to give them our name and everything else. And then I said to one officer, I said, I saw that one E-boat." He said, "No, you didn't. Nobody saw any E-boats." I said, "Well, I did." He said, "No, you didn't." Boy, they were nasty. He said, "You don't tell anybody you saw anything. So you keep quiet, you don't tell nobody nothing." So then I said, "Well, sir," I said, "I just don't feel good down there loading them bombs." I said, "That's dangerous." And he said, "Well," he said, "we'll try and get you some easier duties." Then they put me on a duty on the bread truck. I'd go down to the bakery, and they'd shovel this bread on the truck, and they'd haul it up to the Navy base, and that was good. And then later on, they assigned us to another LST, which is number 345. They said, "We don't know exactly what harbor it's in, but it's probably up in Bath." So we were on our own, so we hitchhiked and everything else up to the harbor. We found it in Bath, and we were on the 345. And of course, several days later, we loaded up, and several days later we went into Normandy, and we had the English troops on, which wasn't quite such a dangerous beach. It was Juneau. And we unloaded them, and then of course we loaded up with wounded and dead soldiers, which we were equipped and they had cots along the side of the ship. And boy, that was a sorrowful thing to go down through that deck and see all them fellas cut up and bruised. It was awful. And we went back to England with those, and then we loaded up and load back, and kept doing that. And when we got the third trip, a big troop ship almost cut us in half, because it rammed us right in the middle. So that put us out of commission for a while. So then we laid, I was sure the dry dock fixed that up for a couple of weeks. And in the meantime, I sort of had a ball. I was running all over England, over to Wales and all around. And then when they got that all fixed up, then I made about 2 more trips over then. And then I got a letter saying I was supposed to have been sent back to New York for recuperation or reassignment. And it was me and Louis Security couple other guys. So then they send us over. We get on the SS Cristobal and come back to the United States. Of course, then we're given 30 days leave. And I came home and no, I didn't. Yeah, I came home. But then I went back up, and then they assigned me to a special Navy base there, delivering U.S. mail downtown Manhattan. And that was really a trip. And we met all the movie stars and just enjoyed New York in its entirety. And then I was given another leave, and I come home, and of course I got married to my wonderful wife, Helen.
Oh, no.
And then I was shipped down to Norfolk, where I laid down there for, Camp Bradford. I was shipped to Camp Bradford. Well, that's out of Norfolk. Camp Bradford. And I laid there for quite a while. I was supposed to be getting training on how to shoot a gun, and I had been through so much, I didn't know why I was getting trained to shoot a gun. But anyway, in the gas chamber, I was sent through the gas chambers, and oh my. And then later on, I was assigned to the U.S. LST 287, and we were getting equipped to go to Japan. And I don't know where I really was at that time. We went to some other base there, and then all of a sudden the war was over, and they said if you have so many points, you can get out of the service. And I looked, and I had more points than I ever needed, so I said, I'm leaving. So I was sent up to Bainbridge, Maryland, and discharged. And that was September 14th, I think. Now, the interim I mentioned about being in the armed guard, going up through Tunisia, Algiers, Tunisia, Valletta, Malta, through the Mezzanine Straits, and up to Naples, Italy. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. And I got to see Pompeii and Naples, Italy, and boy, the harbor was just loaded with sunken ships. So I'm out of the Navy now. I could tell more, but it wasn't enough.
What were your expectations of war, and how were those expectations met?
Really, I was young, and I was enjoying being in the Navy. And I knew we had a war to fight, but I didn't really understand what it was all about, really. And I knew it, whatever I had to do and do it good, and that's what I did. And I knew there were dangers, but every time we got in an attack, submarines came around and torpedoes passed us, and air raids and bombs dropping, I never was scared. I never got scared. I never feared of dying or anything. So I thought we'd win, but I always had such sympathy for the soldiers because they done the work.
So what was your daily schedule like on a day you were not in battle?
Out in battle?
Yep.
Well, it's just more or less maintaining the guns, because on 20 millimeters, they'd only fire so many rounds, and the barrel got so hot. And you had to put new barrel in, so that's what we would do, run around, put new barrels in, maintain the guns, grease them, and make sure the shells were coming up from the ammunition bin, which is down to, the ammunition was down the bottom, right down the bottom of the ship, and we had to get down on a ladder to bring that up. We were in charge of that. I'd get down there every day and take the temperature, make sure that, the temperature wasn't up because that could explode. And that always smelled so weird, like ammunition, like powder. But that's what I was, just maintaining the guns. Except that one night when we were sunk.
Did you keep a journal?
I have a diary I kept, a small diary. I don't think it has everything in there, but you can gladly look at it.
What did you do during your free time?
Well, one of the things they keep busy. In other words, I made a coin bracelet out of coins, and I made a little ship, and anything you could do would be novelty, or just more or less goofing around. Like on the Liberty ships, we had trucks on the deck, and of course we would climb up in those trucks and pretend that we were driving them and everything else, because none of us knew how to drive. And one time we had a tugboat on there, and that was a Probably go tugboat and play around. Just goof off
Did you write home often?
often.
What kinds of foods did you eat?
We had very good food. And for breakfast, boy, you always had baked beans and cinnamon rolls and oatmeal and lots of milk and fried potatoes and you name it. We just had good food. And when holidays came, it was exceptional. It was out of this world. Food I never saw before because we didn't have food like that. We would eat very good. Plenty of it.
Could you name the battles you were in?
Well, just like I said, I was on the Liberty ships, which sort of been after the battles were, they were pretty well up through the, going up to and. But now Normandy, I was in there right when it was going on, right on June the 6th. I was right in that battle. But the others, Casablanca, we went in after it was more or less, calmed down somewhat. There was still a lot of bombing going on and stuff and shells flying around, but it wasn't bad. And then up in Naples, that was quite something, but we were under fire all the time. But as far as the invasion, we just brought the supplies in.
Were you wounded or injured during the war?
Not really. I hurt my knee, but I just never bothered with it. Very lucky.
How long did you serve in the Navy?
3 years. I was out there 3 years, 6 months, and so many days. 26 days, I believe.
Did you come home to the States for leave? And how long of time were you away from home between those leaves?
Well, as long as it would take to go across the ocean and come back, usually like 12 days to go over, 12 days to come back, a week to unload, so it used to be about, I can look in my book and find out, but it's about, I'd say 2 months or so, and then you go back.
What was your most memorable experience?
For the good or the bad? Good experience.
Let's go with the good.
Okay. Well, I guess when I went in and it got my clothes, I was really tickled to have more clothes, because I didn't have much clothes when I went in. And what I had on, that was about it. And then the food. Food is just out of this world as far as I was concerned. Huh? Yeah. Everybody else moaned and groaned about the food, but I didn't. Now the coffee, I didn't drink coffee, and that was something different. So I'll never forget. I used to get, we had everything you can think of. Just food was always good. But how you could have baked beans and fried potatoes and sausage and cinnamon rolls and cereal and everything just for breakfast, boy, oh boy. I ate good.
So, how did the war change your life?
I think it's maybe sort of more manly, or responsible. I felt I accomplished something. My life wasn't going the best before, but I guess I grew up, I guess. That's about it.
Did any other members of your family serve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, four brothers? Yeah, 4 brothers served.
Mm-hmm.
That's Glenn, Sam, Melvin,
James
Joe,
and James.
and James.
That's 5.
5.
And they were in the
Army.
They were all in the Army. I was the only one in the Navy.
Have you kept in touch with those you served with?
No. Well, I did and I didn't. As far as telephoning, I used to telephone a lot of them, yeah. But as far as personally meeting any of them, no, we didn't communicate that close.
And do you have any memorabilia you would share with us?
Yes, I have German shells. I had a German helmet, which I had sold that, and a German passport and record book. I have some shells, a gun. I had 2 rifles, and quite a few pieces of coins and paper little, wartime money, they gave us in Italy when you went ashore to spend, what do you call it? Well, anyway, it was special made money, so. It,
Okay, so this
Okay.
is all of your memorabilia. Can you tell us what you're holding?
I'm holding a picture of my, out at the Great Lakes Naval Training Center. This is the group that I went through boot training with in 1942, April. And at the back is the barracks we slept in, and we're pretty crude. And my finger's pointing to where I am.
Okay, I'm gonna zoom in. That's you right there.
And these are my medals and background of my life in the Navy.
Can you tell us what the medals are for?
Well, one medal is American Theater of Operations, one's a European Medal of Operations. They both have battle stars. There's one a commendation from the Secretary of the Navy for bravery, and good conduct medal, World War II medal, I think. And the other one, I have to look at them and see. This is my amphibious insignia. I was in the amphibious corps, and of course I was in the armed guard too.
And that's a picture of you?
And that's a picture of me. It was just 1945. I had hair.
I'm just gonna zoom on some of your medals here.
I didn't out in this training where we were in the Army, because we used to go 5 o'clock in the morning and we'd march till about 7 or 8, and then we'd eat. I think 7 o'clock we'd eat. Boy, we marched. Had guns, rifles, dummy rifles.
Go ahead.
That's a little Arabian doll I picked up in Casablanca in 1942, and had it ever since. Of course, this is my diary I kept. There's a lot of little information in there. And this is an old pistol I picked up over in Naples, Italy. It's made in 1889. It's old. And this is a concussion grenade, a German concussion grenade, which used to blast your ears to death. This was my Bowie knife, which I carried all the time. Of course, I picked up a new one when I left. This is I never used this one. And then this is I don't know if it's Italian or German bayonet. I picked that up in Italy, though, so I guess it'd probably be theirs. And this is a book of my Army. I have armed guard on it, but it's actually filled with coins and bills, money from
If you wanna hold that up and show us to it, or show that to us.
And there's invasion money in here.
Will you just hold it?
Now these are the.
Yeah, hold it to the camera so I can.
Trying to find those. Now these are bills. They're it's English money, pound notes, 2 pence, 3 pence. It's money which I carried when our ship 531 was sunk, and the English sailor saved it for me. It was all folded up, and it's all full of oil. If you can see, I don't know if you noticed or not. And of course, here's francs, and here's more francs from down in Casablanca, over in France. And this is Italian invasion money, which we had to use when you went ashore, because they didn't use regular money. That's 100 lire, 5 lire. And same thing, and these are coins which I brought home, Irish, English, Italian, francs, you name it, all kinds. And this is from a torpedo tube over in France, Shrawder, France.
Can you show that torpedo one again? I wanna
Okay.
see if I can get a good picture of that. That's really neat, I think. There it is. And that was from France, right?
Mhm, right.
Off an old torpedo.
Cherbourg, France, I got that.
Thanks.
And of course there's 2 shells, German 20mm shells. And here's a piece of shrapnel from a 500-pound bomb. And there's a little ship I made that's sort of been demolished, but and that's the belt which he's still making. Here's one of the bracelets I made out of coins when the real lordship had nothing else to do. I got more. And here's a box of wooden projectile shells, which we never knew or never accomplished whether they were used by, we thought they were the youth used them for training, but then someone said they're poisoned wood, and they would, once they enter the body, they would splinter up and kill you.
And those were Germans, right?
German. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now I had rifles and helmets and that, they're all gone. I don't know if you want anything out of these. or
Yeah,
not.
sure. Show us the pictures if you'd like.
Here's the pictures of the commissioning of the LST 531. That's the christening. And this is where they're, let's see what is the selling of the, no, that's a commissioning of the LST 531. And this is the selling the LST to the U.S. Navy. And this is LST 531 prepared for launching.
And that's the ship you were on.
Yes, that's why it was sunk. Yeah, 8 minutes we had off of that one. Got the best pictures. And this is all a confidential report of the sinking of the ships. There's a report in here from every ship. I don't know what else to say. And that book there contains about everything, and the eagle and the glass on the small discharge was made from German windshield plastic. I had a girl, Marilyn Monroe, too, I had. She's not here anymore. She used to take a long seat.
All right. Do you want to tell us what the these pictures are?
These pictures of the first picture I'd taken after boot camp out into Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and had a picture taken. And these are my dog tags, which I wore for the entire period in the Navy. And this here is the Chicago Armory, which I had gunnery training on various guns, just Thompson submachine gun all the way up to 5-inch, and learned how to tear them apart and how to shoot them. We would go to the various places. I don't know why you want these here.
This is just every day.
You tell her how you developed that.
Huh?
How you develop.
Yes. How did you develop the pictures? And
A lot of these pictures were developed, most all these were developed right on the ship. We weren't allowed to have cameras. So we went ashore and picked up a little old box camera, a 120 I believe it was, and took the pictures, and one of them was smart enough to know how to develop them in vinegar. And he put vinegar and something else together. He developed most all these pictures, and you can't even tell it. I think they look nice. Yeah, he was good. Do you want any more?
go ahead.
This is a picture of USLST 345 unloading tanks in Shrawder Harbor. And I am right on the 40 millimeter gun there in the bow. Very small, but that's me up there.
All right.
This was our first trip to France after the invasion. And this is the life-saving jacket the rubber life-saving jacket they gave us in the armed guard, and we put them on and tested them, as you can see this guy's doing, and we'd go in the water and they'd fill up with water, so they didn't amount to much. And this is LST-45 coming back from France with wounded and dead Navy and Army and Air Force, and coming into harbor. And we unload the wounds and they did, and take a load of supplies back. Guys tell their whole story in here.
Okay.
This is the back of the paper that the Scuttlebutt LST Association puts out. It's called the Scuttlebutt, and it contains stories of life on the LSTs and their experiences and whatever. And I subscribe to that, and I have the complete collection since 1985 that came out. That's the first they started talking about the LSTs. And this is the pointer, which was put out by the armed guard, which I was in. You can see there's one of the soldiers. He was a prisoner, and they were bringing him back on one of the ships. Now, I was not involved in bringing him back, but that's the way it used to be. And this covers the armed guard crews, like the Liberty ships and the tankers I was on. And they're very interesting reading. These guys tell their whole stories in here. I never put mine in, but it's here.
Is that all of the memorabilia?
Yeah, I guess so. Got anything else, Hal?
I don't know anything else you have.
I'm gonna bring down my hammock, and I have my hammock and my mattress and my sea bag yet. Can't believe they don't use hammocks anymore.
Well,
we slept in hammocks out in Great Lakes when I was training. There used to be like five hammocks in one bay, and that's the way we slept, 5 in a bay. And then of course there were 20 or 30 bays, but it was against the rules to upset anybody. But during the night, we were like 5 feet off the floor, and somebody would crawl down through and twist their hammock, and down you would go. But that wasn't very good sleeping. So.
well, thank you for letting us interview you. So.
I think you were taking the time, but I hope you contributed something.
Something.
That was great.
Something.